It is truly my honor and my fortune and my pleasure to be with all of you today. It's strange that you invited me to an event of the Bank of America, considering I have not had a bank account or signed a check since 1969. But I'll try my best. Om Gyantimidandasya Gyananjanachalakaya Chakshuru Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya-deshatharine. My special gratitude to Tamara, who invited me to be with you, and we had such a wonderful discussion where she was coaching me. I'm kind of one of you. She was trying to give me confidence and inspiration and enthusiasm and all of these things that we're all looking for in life. Thank you, Tamara. And my special gratitude to Brian Moynihan, who I had a great pleasure of spending time with him just earlier this year in India. We were at a marriage together. We spoke. And to each and every one of you, because truly it is a great fortune that you all have such special education and training to help you to grow in your career as well as in your lives. Could everyone hear? Oh, yes, very nice. I'll make the mic closer to me. From my conversation with Tamara, we shared the great importance for everyone to establish goals and values in life. Goals and values for our careers, and especially for the very quality of our life and what we want to share with our loved ones and with the world. And those goals and values become like a compass. And whatever sunny days or stormy days are there, if you're in a ship in a sea and you're the captain, you always adjust your decisions according to the compass. We don't always have control over which way the winds blow or the speed that they blow, but we do have the power to choose how we're going to adjust the sails. And that will determine which way we go in our life. In more modern terms, we have GPS. And Believe it or not, I still have a driver's license. I live in India most of the year, but when I come here, sometimes I drive. And these GPS, you're driving and it says, this voice, turn right in 50 yards, 20 yards, 10 yards, turn right now. But me, because I have all these meditational thoughts in my mind, sometimes I keep going. Or even I turn left. And then something happens. The GPS says, recalibrating. And that's really how we should live in our life. When you type in your goal, where you want to go, the destination, then the GPS is there to tell you. But sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes things just don't go the way we want them to go. And sometimes we actually found ourselves going kind of in another direction. So the strength of a person is how we recalibrate in reference to where we really want to go in our life. The Bhagavad Gita, one of its central themes is how to work. To perform our work, our actions, our words, to the best we can, with proper values. And then whatever the result is, it's an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to grow. This not only leads to success, but this approach to life is success in itself. To genuinely, honestly try our very best with the values we hold sacred and not be attached to what the result is, but see the result as an opportunity. And throughout history, we find great people in all fields of life. They saw opportunities to grow, even in apparent failure. Because in this world, whoever we are, there's honor and dishonor. Success, failure, victory, defeat, pleasure, pain. It's inevitable. But how could we grow? One great personality from India, Srila Prabhupada, he taught that one's greatness has to be estimated by how we respond to difficult and provoking situations in life. In this regard, I'd like to share a story with you. In 2012, in Mumbai, where I live, there was a conference, a very important conference. The event was International Women's Day. And that particular year, there was headlines of rapes and abuse to innocent women. So this particular conference was very, very important for many people. There were CEOs of corporations, there were government leaders, and the keynote speaker was a small, elderly lady who was wearing a simple, traditional village sari. Her name was Sindhutal Sapkal. Sindhutai Sapkal. Have any of you heard of her? She told her story, and literally every single person in the audience was weeping. May I share what I have learned from this story? She was born in a little village in the state of Maharashtra, India. Her family, they lived in very acute poverty. Sindhutai, when she was 6 years old, she longed to go to school to get an education, because nobody else in the history of her family ever had an education. But her parents, they told her that it's not possible. You have to take care of our small herd of buffaloes. So she's a little tiny girl with a little stick with these gigantic water buffaloes, taking them around to eat grass or whatever, weeds. And at a certain time, she would bring them to a pond where they would go up to their necks to cool off. And at that time, she would run to the school. Because she was usually late, the teacher would regularly beat her with a stick. And then she'd run back to get the buffaloes, and sometimes the buffaloes, they wandered into somebody else's property and was eating their crops. So the farmer would beat her with a stick. She told us these were the best years of her childhood. When she was just approaching 10 years old, she was forced to get married to a man who was over 30 years old. When she was 19, she had 3 sons and was pregnant with another child. At that time, some local mafia people were exploiting the villagers. In fact, they were working women like slaves. And everyone was afraid to say anything. But Sindhutai, she reported it to the district collector, who oversees the police. And they acted on it. So the leader of this gang was so infuriated, he went to Sindhutai's husband and told a terrible lie. He said, "Your wife is cheating on you regularly. She's having relations with so many men, and I want to tell you that the child who is now in her womb is not your child. It is my child. I've been having an affair with her. And if you don't do something about it, we're going to do something to you." So the husband was infuriated. He was afraid. And he went to Sindhutai and repeatedly kicked her in the stomach, again and again and again, until she blacked out and fell unconscious. He thought she was dead. He dragged her to a cow pen, just a free area in a little, like a barn, where the cows were kept. The reason? That he felt that when people saw her dead, they would think she was trampled on by the cows. One particular cow took pity on this helpless, unconscious girl and stood over her. There were so many cows crowding around, and bulls and oxen, and People were sometimes coming in and out, and she would have been trampled. But this cow stood over her, and anything or anyone that came close to her, with the cow with her horns, shooed them away. When Sindhutai came to consciousness, she saw the cow saved her life. Under that cow, she gave birth to a little girl. She found a rock with a sharp edge and cut her umbilical cord. And for hours and hours and hours, she just laid with her infant under the cow. And when she had enough strength, she got up, she embraced that cow, and she made a promise. As you have saved me when I was helpless, I will give my life to help the helpless. She went home to the family she grew up with. But due to some strange custom, when a girl gets married, she's not allowed to come to live with her biological family. So they rejected her. She had nothing. She had no one. She only had this little baby. She was so afraid of being abused, of being raped, of being exploited. Where would she sleep at night? She found a place. On a riverside, there was a crematorium where under the open sky, bodies were burned. And at night, people thought that place was haunted. So they left her alone. She slept there. And sometimes she explained this in her talk. She was so hungry that in some traditions around the body, they sprinkle wheat before they burn it. So she would collect that wheat, mix it with some river water, and make bread, cooking it on the flames of the corpse. It was such a difficult life for her. Again and again, she was contemplating suicide. And she did not want her child to grow up in this world. So late one night, she decided. She would hold her little baby in her arms and lay on the railway tracks in front of a moving train. She laid there waiting for the train. And something happened. She heard a dying man near the railway platform crying helplessly for help. It moved her. She got up with her little child. She found that man. He was very old. He was starving for food and water. So she went and begged from others and got him food and water. And when she saw what a difference she made in his life, she understood that his crying was God's calling to her to do what she promised the cow, to help the helpless. Better than ending her life was to live with a meaningful purpose to her life. But then she had nothing and no one. She explained that day in the heat of the sun, she was sitting under a tree in a field with her little baby. And she noticed in the tree, a woodsman had brutally cut one branch of that tree. That branch was all chopped up and hanging from just a thread of wood. And she appreciated that this branch is giving shade to me and my baby. So like this chopped up branch, no matter what situation has come, I could still do something valuable in my life. And it was then and there, under that chopped up branch, in the Indian sun, that she decided she would dedicate her life to help homeless, helpless children. And there's no shortage of those in India. She went from railway place to railway place, from village to village, and wherever she found homeless, helpless children, often beggars, child labor, and she would be their mother. Somehow or other, she would protect them. After some time, she had so many children, some pious people who observed this. They actually built a house for her. And she became known throughout that area, and later throughout India, as the mother of the orphans. After some years, her 3 sons, when they saw the incredible good work she was doing and the recognition she was getting, they left their father and joined her. 2 of them now have doctorate degrees. Sindhutai, over the years, has been given over 300 awards and invited to speak in over 15 countries. But she explained something very meaningful in her life. Decades and decades after being brutally beaten with an attempt to kill, somebody came to her orphanage. By this time, she had several orphanages. He was an old, homeless, sickly man of about 80 years old. And she recognized it was her husband, the man who tried to kill her. He begged forgiveness and begged for help. She forgave him and gave him a place to stay in the orphanage. But she said to him, you are no longer my husband. Now you are my son. And she told the other orphan children, give him a lot of love because he needs it the most. And when visitors would come, because visitors come from all over India and to some extent all over the world to see what she's doing, she would say, this is my eldest son, and he's very naughty. Sindhutai ended her talk on this event for International Women's Day by telling that my story is an inspiration that however difficult and dark things become in our life, we should stand up and rise above these difficulties so that they look small. Never stop moving forward. Never stop fighting. And she said, that is my life. My path was covered with thorns, but I learned how to make friends with those thorns. And my life became simple and beautiful. She's giving such inspiration for so many people. About a year later, after I heard this, I happened to be invited to an event where the two of us were on stage together speaking to a very large audience. Before that, we met together in a private room. And we shared our realizations. We had such a lively talk. It was just beautiful. And I remember she told me the magical moment that transformed her life was when, just like her little baby cried, she cried for the grace of God. And we spoke some more. It was time to go. I stood up, and she pointed to me to a girl sitting next to her. Very, very beaming, energetic, smiling little girl with glistening eyes. She was actually a young lady. And Sindhutai said, "This is one of my daughters." He said, "I have hundreds and hundreds of daughters. This is one of them. She's a medical doctor, and she is running one of my orphanages now." Then Sindhutai began to cry, and with a choked voice she said, "She's the one that was born under the cow." This story is real life of someone who is living among us today. Gives us inspiration, gives us hope in whatever situation, that if we truly try our best with proper values, we could live, we could learn, we could improve, and we could grow in our life. When I came to New York a few days ago, the airline hostess was giving all the rules of the flight. And I remember one of them is they hold up a little oxygen mask and put it on their face and say, if something happens and the oxygen mask comes down, put it on your face, mothers, before you put it on your child's face. So usually you would think a mother would want to put it on her child's face first, because sometimes a mother's willing to give her life for her little beloved baby. But you can't really do that unless you have the strength. A lifeguard has to learn swimming for herself or himself. And if we want to help people financially, we have to have finances. So it's very important. The beginning of compassion to others is compassion to oneself. But that compassion to oneself is not with arrogance or egoism. It's with a broader view, the holistic picture of life. The better I am, the more I can succeed, the more I can share something with my loved ones. In the world today, people are so programmed to be focusing on quantity that sometimes we forget quality of life. Each and every one of us is very special. We have to be true to who we really are, with confidence and humility. They actually are completely in harmony with one another. Life is like an exam. Often today, people fail their exam because they're copying the paper of the person sitting next to them. And what they don't realize is their paper has altogether different questions than the person sitting next to me. So the quality of life is not how we're compared to others. It's the values and the sincerity, the love of my own life. Can I tell another story? This happened a few years ago. In Mumbai, I was invited to speak in an auditorium of college students. There was about 300 or 400 students. This particular college was for accountants, chartered accountants, certified accountants, all sorts of accountants. Everyone was there, was either an accountant or becoming an accountant. And why they invited me to speak, it's kind of the same type of mystery as today. Anyways, I spoke something. I tried my best. And after I made what may be interpreted as a mistake, should I tell? I asked if there was any questions. And a lot of people raised their hands, but one man really, his hand just flew into the air. So I said, yes. I'm standing at a podium on the stage, and he stood up. When he stood up, everyone in the room seemed to make the same sound. Ooh. They all looked at him. I understood this man is a very influential, charismatic person. Standing up, he pointed his finger at me, was screaming at me at the top of his lungs. He said, "You are a cheater. You are a hypocrite. You are misleading everyone." And he went on and on and on like that for about a minute, just chastising me, accusing me. And you know what happened when he finally finished? He got a standing ovation from all the students. They all stood up and were clapping and howling. I guess sometimes students like to see their teacher get something like that. So I was standing there, and I said a little prayer silently. God help me. Give me something to say, because I wasn't expecting that. And after the howling and the rooting and the clapping finally subdued, and everyone sat down, what he said when he was screaming at me was this. He said, this is the reason I was such a cheater. What if everyone in the world became a Swami like you? Who will do the banking? Who will do the commerce? Who will do the farming, the engineering? Who will run the governments? Therefore, you are a cheater. Everyone loved that. When they finally sat down, would you like to hear what I said? I said, "Dear sir, what if everyone in the world became an accountant like you? Who would do the banking? Who would run the governments? Who would do the engineering? Who would grow the food for people? In fact, if everyone in the world became an accountant like you, there would be a 100% unemployment rate, because no one would need an accountant. I said, just like the human body, we have so many organs, limbs. Each organ is a different shape, a different color, and has a very, very unique, different function than all the other organs. But a healthy body is when each part of the body recognizes, appreciates, and lives in harmony with all other parts of the body. An example, if you drop something on your little tiny toe, which doesn't have that much significance compared to other parts, every part of the body, the heart, the brain, will start sending healing energy and blood to try to restore and heal that little toe. That's a healthy body, where we all recognize our own God-given abilities. And however big or however small, they're precious. They're invaluable. Not only to ourselves, but to others. Similarly, just as this is what determines a healthy body, a healthy human body, society, is when each of us really appreciates what we can do and appreciates what others do and how we're all interconnected and how we're all interrelated. And if we do great things, we should all be striving for greatness in our own way, whatever it may be. And that's a glorious life. If we can share something beautiful that we have from our nature, our personality, our character, our efforts with one person, that's glorious. If we can share it with tens and millions of people, that's also glorious. The greatness of life is the integrity, the sincerity of how we live. In India, I serve with so many different types of people. Villagers. We have programs for women empowerment in these very downtrodden, poverty-stricken villages where suicide is such a high level. And we give these wonderful ladies who have no education whatsoever in their life, they're usually little babies, we teach them how to do things. Give them confidence. And most all of them now are earning more than their husbands. And we're also serving with CEOs of international corporations. Some are billionaires. And one particular person I'm thinking of, whose house it was that I met Brian, this marriage, he loves to share his heart. He's considered one of the most charitable, philanthropic people in the whole of India. He says that actually nothing is mine. Whatever fame, whatever influence, whatever money, it's all entrusted to me. It's beyond a sectarian idea of one religion or another. It's a universal principle that this is all my intelligence, my resources, they're entrusted to me. I'm not the proprietor, I'm the trustee. To utilize for the well-being of my family, my loved ones, human society, and other living beings. And he's such a wonderful person. The society loves him because he earns, he competes with enthusiasm, with patience, but also with love and compassion. And I don't really see much of a difference between this man and some of these little village ladies that I meet. Have the same fulfillment quality of life because they're each doing the best that they can, being true to themselves, with confidence. The reversals of life can be seen as curses or blessings. And actually they are what we see them as. In India, there's the mango tree. And it's amazing that in Maharashtra, the state that I live, it only rains 4 months a year. And then usually the rest of the year is a total drought. So the mango tree gets water in the monsoon season, and not a drop of water for the next 8 months. And it's just before the next monsoon season, during the summer, when there's so much heat, the mango becomes ripe. So the difficulties, somehow or other, the mango tree keeps getting sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and giving mangoes. So let us never be discouraged. Let us keep our GPS focused on our goal, and whatever may happen, recalibrate. And having such a wonderful conference as this, learning leadership skills, learning leadership attitude, we could all be leaders. Exactly what form that leadership takes, that's sometimes just the wonderful mystery. Swamis talk about miseries a lot, I'm sorry. It's one of the wonderful mysteries of life, what unfolds. Let's just be good and do good and be the best we can be in every way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Do you want to do any Q&A? I heard your last story about that, but I think this is a friendly audience.
Well, going back to that story, I actually forgot to tell the end of it. But I'm gonna do that. After I gave this analogy, I ended by saying the world needs accountants. And the world needs bankers, and the world needs farmers, and the world needs government agents, and the world needs farmers. But there's also a place in the world for little swamis like me. We have to learn to respect and work and serve together. And when I said that, that person who challenged me, he went like this. And I'm a little shy to say what happened next. But I got a louder and longer standing ovation than he did. I dare to ask if there's any questions. I actually wrote a whole book to answer your question. It's called The Journey Home, but I'll try to make it really condensed. I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1950. My grandparents were Jewish immigrants that came from Eastern Europe and Russia. And of course, my parents lived through the Great Depression, so they really struggled just for survival. And they worked so hard. And my father, he worked harder and harder and harder trying to provide for his family, and he invested all his money in a particular business. I don't know if you know this, because this is kind of before some of your time. Did you ever hear of the Edsel? It was the biggest disaster in automobile history. It was a whole line of Ford. So my father went through total bankruptcy, and my mother and father were always trying to give us the best they could, and they really did. They had such integrity. But as I grew up, I couldn't really appreciate their values, because I was a teenager in the 1960s. And when I was 15 years old, I got a job because I didn't want to put pressure on my family, and everyone who was in my job was African Americans. It was a car wash. And they were all the age of my parents. I was just like a little boy. But we became so close. They became like my parents. But I saw, not only did I see, I felt. There really wasn't equal rights on a practical social level in our society. Constitutionally, it's great, but these people had no freedom to get out of the ghetto. Their poverty, the discrimination against them, they were all alcoholics, not because they were bad, but just coping. So I became very, very much disturbed. How could I be satisfied? How could I be happy when people like this are suffering? So I joined the civil rights movement when I was a teenager with some of the very close associates of Dr. Martin Luther King, and I used to march. And sometimes people of my color would throw rocks and bottles at me because they didn't like me there. But I really was feeling it's an honor to be disliked for something of a higher cause. And then I joined the counterculture, which is kind of like a sociological, sophisticated way of saying a hippie. And grew my hair long. And in those days, today, growing hair long is a fashion. In those days, it was a social statement of revolt. It was a rejection of the norms of society. And if you grew your hair long, people really hated you. They were threatened by you. But really and honestly, I was just trying to be true to myself and trying to live by what I felt was true and valuable in life. After a few years, I saw the same kind of problems in the counterculture as what we were revolting against. And I saw the really influential people who I believed in the civil rights movement. They had spiritual foundation. And I believed that if I want to make a change in the world, I have to change myself. I heard the words of Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. So how to do that? So I felt it was a spiritual experience. I was listening to the revolutionary music of the 60s, and I remember I was listening to one. I used to listen to Ray Charles, Old Man River, about how people were suffering and what can I do about this? I seem helpless. Then I heard another song, Look to Your Soul for the Answer. And I started reading spiritual books and religious books, but then a problem happened. Throughout my life, I saw so much discrimination, arrogance, and hatred in the name of a loving God. So either I have to reject religion altogether, or there must be some common, beautiful essence that's at the heart of all great spiritual paths that's common. And somehow, from my heart, from my soul, I believed that that was there. So I decided with my friend to go on a summer trip to Europe to explore how other people see life, what their values are, what their conceptions of God and religion are. So for $65, because I didn't have money, but I had $65, I got a flight to Iceland. But then there was a connecting flight to Luxembourg. And it's a long story, but I started just hitchhiking around Europe and going to cathedrals and monasteries and art museums to try to get a spiritual message. And I was going to so many forests, and parks. And when I was in a Greek island, I was praying for direction, and I heard a voice at the sunset that I thought it was a divine voice. I heard it within me. It wasn't something with my ears. Go to India. And the friend that I was with, that I grew up with from early childhood, we were living in a cave together in Crete, the Greek island. And I was up in a mountain all day, and he was at the seashore, the Mediterranean, and we would come back. And I remember I said, Gary, something incredible happened to me at sunset. And Gary said, something incredible happened to me at sunset. I said, what happened? He said, you won't believe me. I said, just tell me, I will believe you. He said, no, you won't believe me. And I said, what happened? He said, I heard a voice. What did the voice say? I asked. He said, go to Israel. I said, where? He said, I told you wouldn't believe me. I said, no, I just didn't hear. Where? He said, he told me to go to Israel. We should both go to Israel. I said, Gary, he told me to go to India. So the next morning I left and hitchhiked to India. I never met an Indian in my life at that time. I never even tasted a chili pepper. I had no map, I had no money for a map, but I believed that God was calling me to India, so I told Gary, if I just keep hitchhiking in the east direction, someday I will arrive there. And I remember when this book, The Journey Home, came out, there were many releases. One was at London University, SOAS. And there was a couple hundred students and professors and priests that were there. And after I told my little story, like what I'm telling you, there was a line of people who wanted me to sign books for them. And one girl, very, very effulgent and energetic and smiling college student, she said, "I really liked your story." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Do you know why I really liked your story?" "Because I am the president of the All England Hitchhikers Association." She said, "I want to take my group on the same journey you did, through the same route to India." No, my route was through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. She asked for my suggestion. I proposed to her, get your whole hitchhiking society, get on the side of the road and hitchhike to Heathrow Airport. And eventually, you can take a flight to India. You can't do it anymore like that. But I was searching for truth. I was searching for meaning. I had no intention of being a Swami or a monk, or I didn't even know what a Hindu was. I was just looking for meaning and truth in my life, and somehow in my path, this is where I ended up. So whatever gifts I've been given, my greatest joy is to share them. Does that kind of answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you so much.